All right, so here's where we left off with the respiratory system diseases. So we talked about all the different types of pneumonia, and like I said, we kind of started with the most common type of pneumonia and just kind of worked our way through there. Now we're going to talk about viral diseases of the lower respiratory tract. And so this is, again, where I'm going to have to probably make some revisions here soon. Your book is probably going to have to be rewritten, at least this chapter is going to have to be, because one type of viral pneumonia is SARS, and SARS is a coronavirus. So the current pandemic that has us all stuck at home for the past month or so is actually very closely related to the original SARS virus from almost 20 years ago in Asia. It's a new coronavirus. It's a new strain of the SARS coronavirus. Obviously, it is causing some very serious respiratory illnesses across the world. It's one of those things where this has been predicted for a long time now. We haven't seen a new virus in quite a while. I was doing actually some research the other day, and surprisingly enough, this coronavirus has kind of followed a lot of the same patterns that the plague did, 600 years ago. Originated in, China, kind of ran rampant there for a while, traveled, through there to Italy, the Middle East. The Middle East and Italy were devastated by the plague, moved up into France and Spain, and then to kind of the rest of the known world. And that's kind of exactly what this coronavirus has done. So it's very strange that it kind of followed that same path. What was once a virus that we hardly even talked about in microbiology and we never even really heard about in the world is now, the number one news story for the last couple months. Again, the current coronavirus that's spreading is closely related to the SARS CoV virus from about 20 years ago. It is a form of viral pneumonia. It can also occur as a complication from the flu, measles, or chickenpox. Oftentimes, if someone is, sick with, those types of symptoms, the bacterial causes will be ruled out, usually through blood tests and antibiotic treatments and all that. And if everything comes back negative and the antibiotics don't work, then usually the doctor will just say, well, you have viral pneumonia. There's not a lot we can do about it. You can be checked into the hospital, put on fluids, put on, various medications, but really, just like with the common cold, viral pneumonias, you just have to get better on your own. Your body has to fight it off on its own. Just like we talked about with the immune system, this is a brand new virus. So our immune systems haven't seen it before. They have to, build up the antibodies to it. They have to build up immunological memory to it. And then once you see it again, hopefully your body will be better prepared. You'll be ready to fight it off. There's a lot in the news right now about the development of a vaccine. Again, I did some research on that too. There was a vaccine in development many years ago, and then when the SARS thing kind of died away, they shelved it, and they said, well, we don't really need a vaccine for this anymore because it kind of died off and it didn't really spread the way they thought it was going to spread. And here we are almost 20 years later, and we really could have used at least somewhere to start with the vaccine. And we'll see what happens. Hopefully things will start getting better here soon. Sorry, that's my dog barking. Hopefully she'll cut that out. Brand new virus, never seen it before, related to the SARS virus. And who would have thought? I said on Facebook the other day, teaching microbiology will never be the same. It'll just never be the same. Teaching this class, anytime you say immune system, antibodies, vaccine, everybody's going to think coronavirus, at least for the foreseeable future. So it's quite an interesting time, I think, for all of us. Another respiratory virus, respiratory syncytial virus, or RSV. It's more commonly found in infants, and it's very dangerous for the elderly. It's often misdiagnosed as the flu. Again, with these viruses, it's much harder to test for viruses. I mean, the tests are expensive. The tests aren't, all that super sophisticated. You would think they are, but it's kind of hard to test for viruses. And a lot of times if you have the certain symptoms and, you're not responding to antibiotics, your blood tests all come back negative for bacteria, they're just going to say, oh, it must be the flu. But it may not be the flu. I mean, it could be the coronavirus. It could be RSV. It's just the flu is so much more common that often that's going to be kind of the direction the doctors will go. So let's talk about the flu. So influenza has been around for a very long time, unlike the coronavirus. And it really is the major viral disease of the lower respiratory tract. So, we've been talking about influenza, throughout the course. And, it's up until this whole coronavirus pandemic, influenza was really one of the most dangerous respiratory diseases. Just nobody really talked about it. Nobody gave it much consideration. So the type of virus is called an orthomyxovirus. It has a thick enveloped capsid and 2 types of spikes. It is a very formidable virus. That's why it's so hard to control. It's so hard to treat. And even developing vaccines, we've gotten pretty good at it. We're still not super great at it. Symptoms of the flu: chills, fever, headache, muscle aches, nausea. So there's all kinds of different strains of the flu that have been discovered. The flu is probably the most mutagenic virus that we've ever known. Antigenic shifts, we already know what that is. That's when the outer protein makeup changes. The flu also has the ability to do antigenic drifts. That's when just very minor antigenic shifts occur. So the flu is so changeable that the virus is different just about every year. We try to develop vaccines that are going to target as much strains as possible, but it's just not always possible. And it just so happens that this year, instead of a new strain of the flu, we get this new coronavirus. And the coronavirus is a very different virus from the influenza virus. So don't think that they're very closely related. So the vaccines are anywhere from 70 to 90% effective. If you look in the book on page 696, just to give it some, perspective, there's 3 major types of influenza: A, B, and C. Type A is really the only one we worry about. Type A is really the only one that causes some, major diseases. And the H1N1, which was what the swine flu was, if you remember the swine flu from, about a decade or so back. But that's also what the Spanish flu was. So the Spanish flu, by the way, is a big misnomer, because that flu actually originated in the United States. It did not originate in Spain. But the Spanish flu occurred 100 years ago, right during World War I, and more people died of the flu than were killed in World War I. The Spanish flu was one of the biggest pandemics in the history of mankind. Wasn't quite as bad as the Black Plague in terms of number of people who died, but it's up there. I think it's in the top 3 of, pandemics that have wiped out the most people. And it was just a different strain of influenza. It's the same virus, a different strain, a new strain, and it was called the H1N1, and that was the same thing that the swine flu was. So, of course, 100 years ago, we didn't have, the vaccines, we didn't have the treatments that we have nowadays, we didn't have technology, we didn't have a lot of the knowledge that we have now. So, The flu is a very, very interesting thing to study. Again, very, very common, but it's deadlier than you think. A lot of people think it's not a big deal kind of thing, and it certainly is, especially for children, the elderly, people with cancer, people with HIV or AIDS, anybody with a weakened immune system. This virus is very, very dangerous. So here's a picture of it, just for the fun of it. Again, page 696. So you can see the capsid, the different spikes. Very scary looking virus, and as it should be. It's a very formidable, very resistant virus, and highly, highly mutagenic. All right, we're going to finish off the chapter with some fungal diseases. Histoplasmosis is a yeast-like fungus that causes a disease very similar to tuberculosis. And this one is by far the most prevalent fungal respiratory disease in the United States. Coccidiomycosis is filamentous fungus that's carried by the wind that also resembles tuberculosis. Pneumocystis pneumonia is another type of fungal pneumonia. Now, all of these fungal respiratory diseases are extremely dangerous for people with HIV and AIDS. Pneumocystis is probably the worst of all. So this is extremely dangerous to anyone who is immunocompromised. Blastomycosis is a fungus from the soil. This is why if you're doing a lot of gardening or digging in the dirt, very good idea to wear a mask, wear gloves. If you're not wearing gloves, make sure you wash your hands before you touch your face. It can cause abscesses to form in the lungs. And then aspergillosis is a common opportunistic infection, so it's a nosocomial infection, especially people with immunocompromised. It's, again, if you're a healthy, normal adult, your body is very good at fighting off fungal diseases. Elderly, HIV or AIDS, transplant, cancer, any of the immunocompromised groups, the fungal diseases are much, much more dangerous. But pneumocystis pneumonia, definitely the most dangerous for people with AIDS, but any of these can be dangerous for people with AIDS. So just, I would say, just go with the descriptions that are here. You will be tested on quite a few of these on the test. So make sure you, try not to get these too confused because they do have some similarities. Try to focus on their differences, and hopefully you'll get them all right on the test. So that's it for chapter 24. There won't be a lot of stuff about the coronavirus on this test, but maybe in the future we'll have more to learn and say about it. But certainly you should know all the different types of pneumonia, the different bacteria that are responsible for those different types of pneumonia. You need to know the pathogenesis of tuberculosis for your short answer question. And then, of course, the stuff that we talked about influenza is important as well. So that'll be it for this chapter.